You asked us to believe that your very special experts couldn't save one piece of data from this drive, or one just like it, correct?
That's what I was advised, yes.
The American people don't believe that. You realize that it's the idea that we can recover the last 17 or 18 seconds from Challenger exploding above our atmosphere, falling to the sea and being left under the sea for a year, that we could recover the voice from that, makes people wonder why a product that simply came in and out of the office with Lois Lerner every day, suddenly not one piece of data could be recovered.
That's Congressman Darrell Issa grilling IRS Commissioner John Koskinen on Capitol Hill this week. At the same hearing, Koskinen also testified that investigators have found backup tapes in the Lois Lerner email probe. So those lost emails may not be so lost after all. We're back with Dan Henninger, and Wall Street Journal Washington columnist Kim Strassel also joins us. So, Kim, to paraphrase Vince Lombardi in a different context, what in the heck is going on around here?
So this is crazy, Paul. About 10 days ago, congressional investigators got a tip from a guy who works in the IRS counsel's office. He was giving private testimony and said, well, you know, we may have some tapes after all, and they might have some of Lois Lerner's emails. Koskinen, who we just heard, in fact, confirmed that indeed they look as though there may be some backup tapes, and indeed her emails may be on it. Now, here's what's interesting about this. He also acknowledged that this has come out of the fact that the Treasury Inspector General is conducting yet another investigation. He was the guy who blew the whistle on IRS targeting in the first place. And it appears that these tapes have only been found as a result of his investigation. This is the same IRS who only a month ago said, without a doubt, these tapes are all gone. There's no way we can get our emails. And now they've had to reverse themselves.
Okay, so given that, how are we going to find out what is the real truth here? Who is going to be the person who is responsible for going in and saying, yes, we have them, or no, we don't? Or are we going to have to rely on the word of the IRS again? And we'll be back here 6 months later saying, oh, sorry, can't find them again.
That is the billion-dollar question. Here's the problem. So, as I said, it looks as though this is coming out of a Treasury Inspector General investigation. He is not obliged to make public anything he does until he puts together a report. Now, he has told a judge here that he's got 11 people working on this investigation, but this is all happening behind the scenes. Meanwhile, the IRS is using that special Inspector General investigation as an excuse to not tell Congress things, saying, look, we don't want to mess with the Inspector General's investigation. So, you know, now the other question is whether or not you shouldn't have a court appoint a forensic investigator to look at this.
Let me ask you that. There are some civil lawsuits that are going, moving forward, separate from these probes that you were talking about. And judges have asked the IRS to explain the missing emails. Is Judge Reggie Walton, for example, in Washington, does he have the capacity to appoint, say, a forensic expert who could go in and do his own investigation of what happened?
He absolutely does, and in fact, that's the question that's facing him right now. Last Friday, the IRS filed a declaration with him, giving him a bit of bland information about the history, supposedly, of what happened to the tapes and to the hard drive. He now has to decide whether or not that answer is adequate and whether or not he wants to appoint a forensic investigator. Let's hope he does, Paul, because I think that that's going to be one of the only ways we actually get some public information about what's happening at the IRS.
So here you have the tax agency of the United States, Dan, which is responsible for handling confidential tax records, and they can't keep track of the most basic email hard drives. I mean, something wrong with this picture?
Something is tremendously wrong with this picture, Paul. I mean, just set aside the issue of the investigation of the conservative groups. I think to the average American taxpayer, the question here is whether the Internal Revenue Service, which, as you say, is guilty of frightening incompetence. I mean, incompetence is just mind-boggling to anybody who works in the private workplace, or whether something more malign is going on here. And as Kim suggests, the only way we're going to find out is if Judge Walton appoints an independent forensics expert to get into that agency and find out what their problems. It cannot go on like this.
Kim, is this part of a larger problem of just data handling and transparency inside this administration? You've been following this issue as closely as anyone.
Well, I mean, this is the administration that claimed it would be the most transparent in history. And we've got disappearing hard drives and missing emails everywhere. It's not just the IRS. You know, Congress was also told recently they're looking into, for instance, the EPA. And a guy who is central to their EPA investigation, they're looking into the Pebble Mine veto.
In Alaska,
the veto in Alaska.
Yeah, right.
And one of the guys who they're most interested in, who seems to have encouraged the agency, the EPA, to take this route, guess what? His hard drive crashed too. We've got, yeah, it's amazing.
All right, Kim, thanks so much. We'll keep following this for folks. We have to take one more break.